The doctor said that was a sign of brain damage. I guess it starts back in March 1986. I was about 19 months old. My mom was out painting our house, had neighbors across the street helping her out, and
when he didn't want to go down for a nap and he was crying.
It was time to put me back in my room. My dad was going in and out of the house all the time.
My husband had come out just to ask us if we needed more paint, and then he went back in and Daniel wasn't crying anymore, and he thought, this is weird. It was like something told him, get in there. And he went in.
And he found me under a dresser. And apparently what happened was I pulled out the drawers, pulled out all the clothes, and I climbed up the dresser, and it tipped over, and I ended up underneath it.
He wasn't breathing, and he just was gray or blue, like he didn't have any oxygen. And
it broke a piece of my skull off, and it also caused me to aspirate, which is to vomit and then inhale that vomit into your lungs, which that aspirating caused the necessary oxygen to my brain to be cut off, so I wasn't able to breathe. I was limp. My dad got me out underneath the dresser, and he ran me to the front room where he could yell for my mom, who was outside painting still.
And I came in, and he was giving Daniel CPR, and I tried to call for emergency help, and had a hard time getting through, and I was panicking more and more. And then when I told them that we needed an ambulance at this address, and they kept asking me questions, and I'm like, what are you asking me questions for? Get the ambulance there. And I didn't know it was their job to keep asking me questions, but I was seeing my son lying there lifeless. I just knew he was dead.
They got me down to the Davis Hospital. They needed permission for me to get life flighted to Primary Children's.
They had him on a ventilator, and because he wasn't breathing on his own, they needed to transport him to Primary Children's Hospital by helicopter. And while they were doing that, detectives came and pulled me and my husband into an office, and they had to interrogate us, make sure we didn't beat our child or something, which was really hard for us because we were so worried about him, and what was going on and everything. And then they went and asked all the neighbors, and they decided, no, this was an accident, and they had him in ICU, and they had told us that he might not live through the night. We just stayed there and in the ICU, and he just had tubes and everything all over in him.
I was in a coma during that time. What is termed a sleepy coma, where I was awake, but I wasn't coherent.
He started doing these with things with his body that showed that he had brain damage. That's when they told us that he would probably be a vegetable, that he would never be normal again. And I just couldn't accept that. How could you tell that he was going to be a vegetable just because he was pointing his toes and stiffening and arching and, but they're the professionals, they knew. So I was really excited. They were getting him off the ventilator, and I was going to be able to hold my baby. And then they called and said it didn't work. They had to put him back on. He wasn't breathing on his own yet. And so our bishop came, gave him a blessing, and in the blessing he said that Daniel would recover completely and have a keen mind. And that was really comforting, So we had that to give us hope and faith. It was just a long, hard thing. He had all these therapies, and when he got to come home, he still wasn't swallowing, and so they had to teach me to put an NG tube down his nose into his stomach, which was really scary because sometimes it would come out his mouth. He was in a wheelchair, had therapists coming to our home and trying to work with him, and the blind school was coming to work with him because he was blind. He couldn't see. One day, our bishop was riding his bike past our house, and he had the impression that he needed to come in and give Daniel another blessing. And in the blessing, he talked about Daniel regaining his vision. And within that next week, Daniel started tracking things, and we took him to an ophthalmologist, and he finally said that, yeah, Daniel is seeing now. And so that was another miracle. He did have one of his eyes kind of went out really far after that, and so he had surgery and they brought it back in, and that was one of the side effects from the brain injury.
I had to relearn how to do everything. I couldn't even suck a bottle. I had to learn how to feed myself, how to re-walk. Growing up with it, it was especially difficult because it took me a little longer than most people to grasp things and to learn things.
I think he compared himself with the other kids his age, and for a lot of his childhood he played with his younger brothers and their friends, until he got older, elementary school, junior high, and then he started not playing with them anymore. But I think he always wanted to do what the kids his age were doing, like driving, and it took him longer to drive, but he was determined, and he drives now. This little kid that they said might be a vegetable is driving. I think sometimes kids that have no exposure to this, they don't understand, because we've had kids like that not understand Daniel. I have really appreciated the kids that he's known in his life that has treated him really kindly and have included him in some of their things, because he just wanted to be a normal kid. I'm so proud of my kids for being kind to people with challenges, which I don't know if that hadn't happened. I don't know if my kids or Daniel would be like that. You never know.
I've had the opportunity of working with people with special needs, Down syndrome, and I've been able to understand them more, be more supportive, more understanding to their needs. Larry Haddock, he had a traumatic brain injury. Half of his body is non-functional. Getting to know him, just helping him out. I have to say he's my hero because he is always positive. I don't think I've ever heard him or seen him negative or sad. He always calls me Dan the Man. I'm a part-time bus assistant to special needs children from preschool all the way up to post-high. Working with them, even though it's very little, just strapping them into the bus, locking up the wheelchairs, just seeing the interaction between them and myself or the bus driver. They have this pure love. That's been a highlight of my life as of late. Being able to see these kids and being able to help them, just being their friend on the bus makes them happy. Things could have been a whole lot different if this accident never happened.